Vanunu here in the nation's capital. And they have been out here year after year, particularly on the anniversary of the kidnapping of Mordecai Vanunu. And they have been here month after month in small but very persistent vigils to remind the state of Israel through the embassy that the world is watching and that the world has not forgotten Mordecai Vanunu. And that, once again, is one of the reasons why we're here today, close to the 9th anniversary of the kidnapping of Mordecai Vanunu. We don't have a very large number here. Now, we have people who believe very deeply that Israel needs to be reminded of what it's doing to one of its own citizens, of the torture to which they're subjecting an individual who acted purely out of conscience, with no motive whatever, except to share with his countrymen and with the world the deep, dark secret of Israel's entry into the nuclear weapons club. Not just a token entry, as South Africa has had done, not just a futile effort to go nuclear, as perhaps Iraq and North Korea thought of doing, but a truly massive entry, to the point where the government of Israel now has somewhere between 100 and 300 sophisticated warheads of advanced design. And they are there for the purpose of being used, just as our own far vaster nuclear inventory is where it is for the purpose of being used. And so that was Mordecai Vanunu's gift, a free gift to his fellow country people, and a free gift to all of us in the world of the knowledge of the awful truth that nuclear weapons had been introduced into the Middle East. And for that he has been maligned, perjured, pictured as a spy and a traitor, and consigned to a living hell.
We're back. We're outside the Israeli embassy, actually. There's been a demonstration today, which happens every year, and a smaller one every month, for Mordechai Vanunu. Let's just call him right now the Israeli prisoner of conscience, nuclear prisoner of conscience. And we have the good fortune, before you get on a plane and leave for England and Israel tonight, to be talking to Sam Day, who is expressing his overall feelings that Mordechai Vanunu as an individual, terribly important. But the nuclear whistle that he blew is what brings us all together.
You say it better than I could.
Well, I'm here every week, so I'm going to let you continue.
Okay. And that nuclear whistle is a whistle that needs to be blown not just in little Israel far away, but loud and clear here in the United States, which is essentially the leader in this march towards doomsday. And if the nuclear weapons are to be stopped and reversed, it's going to have to happen in the United States, which is where they began, and where they are developed to the nth degree, both in quality and in quantity. And that means it's up to us Americans to somehow bring sanity to this government.
But the average American may say something like this: all right, I mean, it's an important issue. Certainly we should never use these weapons unless we're really threatened. But we won the Cold War. We're the biggest power in the world. We have lots of responsibilities. For instance, the Iraqis might have used chemical and other kinds of weapons against us. So, you know, it's kooks that advocate we destroy all these weapons, and they don't realize the importance to the United States military of having deterrent power. In fact, it was deterrent power that made us win against the Soviets, and there is no Soviet Union, and they didn't go to war with us, did they? They collapsed without attacking us because they didn't dare attack us, because we had deterrent power. So this sounds, I feel like I'm back at Princeton studying international affairs. I don't necessarily believe what I just said.
No,
you know,
I would hope not.
But I believe a lot of people in this town do believe that. So what do you have to say?
The answer to that is that the Soviet Union lost the Cold War maybe 10 years ahead of our losing it. And we just happened to be bigger and had a gross national product 3 times bigger than theirs, and we're able, at least for the time being, to absorb the huge economic costs and the ultimate environmental costs of nuclear weapons production, even if no nuclear weapons are ever used. It has taken a staggering toll on the United States and decreased the standard of living of Americans vis-a-vis most countries that do not have nuclear weapons. To say we won the nuclear war means that we were able to put a few more medals on the chest of Colin Powell and a few other people who get their glory and their prestige from being number one in the world.
But Americans don't make the connection. They don't make the connection with the fact that we spent trillions of dollars on nuclear weapons and we don't have health care for the citizens of our country like most of the Europeans do. They're not able to make the connection between spending trillions of dollars and poverty in our cities, and guns in our streets, and homelessness and joblessness, and frankly a bankrupt government of the District of Columbia, and potholes and streetlights that don't work. That connection is not made. The only guy I know who's done it recently is Seymour Melman in his New York Times op-ed.
He's been doing it for 20 years, Melman has. The permanent war economy, and he's right.
And he's on the JCOM advisory committee, so there.
Oh, good. Okay. You've got a good man. Well, it's up to you and I and other activists and journalists to make that connection. It's an obvious and necessary connection, and people need to understand the real cost, even if there is no nuclear war, of having become number one in nuclear.
And the likely cost down the road, because sooner or later something will get out of control. You know, you shouldn't be on a program like this just once. You should have your own program, and the subject should be nuclear realities. And you should be reaching people every week. It's, you know, we have our differences. We talked across the street. That's minor in comparison to the similarities. I think you're absolutely right in raising these issues, but on the other hand, we also have to be realistic and admit we hardly have a voice. Seymour gets his op-ed in the paper once a year if he's lucky. You and I just met for the first time after all these years and knowing of each other. Vanunu languishes in prison. We're on public access. This is not exactly a special that's going to appear on NBC News tonight.
No.
So
even if it did, it'd probably be twisted or spun in such a way that it would be discounted politically.
A friend like Cy Hirsch down the street, he lives a few miles from here, writes his book, The Samson Option, and he's one of the best-known journalists in the United States. The book got kind of pushed under.
Yeah.
So the military-industrial corporate complex is running circles around us.
That's true. It's they've got a bit more troops and a bit more money than we do. But still, here we are, and we've got to use the resources that we can and not despair over the fact that it's an uneven playing field. And I think that individually, if you only affect one other person, that's better than not affecting any at all. I don't pretend to have the magnetism or the intellect or the power to move the country by myself, but I've been able to move some people.
I wish that were our problem. I wish I thought that all we have to find is the charismatic Ed Asner or something like that. Look at Noam Chomsky, brilliant intellectual, lines them up at university years in advance. They have to set up speakers in rooms they never even knew could take a speaker before when he goes to universities. And yet the establishment treats him with disdain and derision, and he can hardly go to have lunch at the Harvard Faculty Club without being hissed at.
Yeah.
So,
but he is being heard by an awful lot of people.
Noam is a fantastic person, and he's being. But my point was that
he's a strong supporter of our campaign too.
He's got tremendous intellectual ability, tremendous charisma. He's world known. So it's not. The issue isn't whether people like you or I, or whether you or I are charismatic enough. There's something structurally much bigger than that that's wrong.
Yes.
And I think it has something to do with how the entire military-industrial corporate complex weaves its way with the politicians, the interchange of money and rewards and information. And guys like us, I come from the establishment. Maybe you did originally. I went to all the right schools, got all the right degrees, worked with establishment organizations, represented the World Jewish Congress, and gradually found out that I was being used and manipulated for things I didn't believe in. I even met Anwar Sadat when I was a student and was among the people who got him to go to Israel the first time. So I want our viewers to come away with two things, and then I'll let you conclude. I want them to come away with a sense that we do know what we're talking about. We're right on when it comes to important historical, moral, political issues. But I also want them to realize we're well aware that we're practically voiceless. We're politically castrated, and we don't know what to do about it. At least that's my image. But you get the last word on this program.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Mark, and it compared with the megaphones of the military-industrial complex, our voice is pretty weak. It's not the absence of a voice. There is a voice, but it doesn't compare with the amplification of those who have power. Nevertheless, we have the potential through organizing and through analysis to make a difference, at least over time. Not unlimited time, whether you're talking about the justice for the Palestinians or whether you're talking about life and death for the millions who are threatened by nuclear weapons. But we have the opportunity, if we work together with others, to have that voice heard. That's the most we can do. We may fail. I'm not saying that we're going to be successful if we only find a magic formula. I'm saying that even if we fail, we have an obligation to try to make our voices as clear and true and as loud as we can. If we don't do that, that's worse than succeeding just because we found some gimmick. It's the process of struggling for peace and justice that's important, not necessarily the attainment of peace and justice. And we should not decry the fact that we make little measurable results, and neither should we be too inflated when we see some passing results, like we get an op-ed page story or we get on primetime TV.
Well, let's put it this way, and I think you'll agree with this as the last word, or else we'll give you another last word. If Mordechai Vanunu can sit in a 6x9 cell and maintain his dignity and his sanity under the conditions that he's been subjected to, we can try to put on a TV program, we can try to write in the newspapers, we can buy t-shirts, and it may not have a very major effect, and unfortunately only thousands of people will see this, maybe tens of thousands as it plays in different cities as opposed to millions. But I guess if I'm to be brutally honest with myself as well as with you, well, here I am fighting a cause that doesn't look like we're going to have too much opportunity to win in the short term.
No, but God bless you for fighting that cause. That makes you a person that's worth my talking to for an hour and a half under the hot sun.
Before getting on an airplane.
Right.
Another airplane.
I wish you success, but success is not going to define Mark. It's the way you persist that is the real mark of your character, and that will have a good effect.
Enough self-promotion. I do it myself here on this program. I'm Mark Bruzonsky. I'm your host for this program, Mideast Realities. We've been very fortunate to have Sam Day with us. We're outside the Israeli embassy, and I think nobody got arrested. You sort of called their bluff. They called yours. It was mutual.
We were there. We made the message.
You got your message across. We're going to do what we can to let people hear it and judge for themselves.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good luck to you, and we'll see you down the road.
Well, at the least, we'll be here next year.
Yeah. Right. Good. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Well, I wondered if you were still here.
How are you?
Well,
We
how are you
ended up
doing?
keeping to our time element, and
Yeah.
we.
They didn't know, though. They didn't know that you were going to leave at 2 o'clock.
No. We had beforehand made a decision to stay there for a period of time, and I was certainly willing to risk arrest.
Last year
if
you
that
did get
was the
arrested?
case. I didn't. Sam did, and
Okay.
Louise, who was
Louise,
here.
remember 90-year-old Louise?
Yes. And not only 90-year-old Louise, but the fellow from Japan. Interesting guy.
Max Obashevsky was here too. Have you met Max yet?
Not yet. Max?
How you doing, Mark?
This is Mideast Realities Television, and we're sort of winding up at the moment, and you're the Washington coordinator of the campaign.
You could say that. Yes.
And you're also, you work at the Catholic...
Worker. The Dorothy Day Catholic Worker.
Okay.
It's a community committed to, a Christian community committed to hospitality and resistance.
And your main cause is nuclear weapons world peace?
That's one part of it. We also offer hospitality to homeless families who live in the district.
Oh, then you're a busy man.
So we have our hands full.
Not up here in this nice neighborhood of Van Ness, where I happen to live myself, but the rest of Washington, the other Washington, the majority of Washington.
Tonight our house will be taking out a meal to serve on the streets to the homeless who live on the Ellipse and at Lafayette Park and other places downtown.
Do you see a growing number month by month?
We get at least 2 calls a day from homeless families in need of shelter. That's how bad the crisis is in this city. And we're just one of a number of service groups helping the homeless in that regard. So the situation is catastrophic, in my opinion.
And getting worse. You can feel
and,
it getting worse.
And at the same time, we see the military budget being maintained at almost Cold War levels. The new Seawolf, the 3rd Seawolf nuclear submarine was
B-2's
voted
Seawolves,
for.
right.
And
Star Wars.
It's just one day there was a front page piece in the Post that said, the House cuts social service programs, and right below it, money for ballistic missile defense system increases. So there you see the direct contrast. And we do what we can. We vigil every week, every Monday morning at the Pentagon. This has been going on for 8 years now. And we were part of a campaign during the summer where over 90 people were arrested at the Pentagon to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and to call for worldwide disarmament. And we all will be going to court on October 6th. There are 102 cases pending in the U.S. District Court in Alexandria, Virginia, as a result of the resistance that went on during the summer.
Well, if you had 1,006 or 10,006, maybe the system would come to a screeching halt.
Well,
but unfortunately,
we're doing what we can, and trying to call attention to the crimes of our government. And today, here at the Israeli embassy, the real crime is the possession of nuclear weapons and the construction of nuclear weapons. Not what Mordecai did or what we were attempting to do, although we've been arrested and charged with crimes for nonviolent actions such as these. But the real crime is the existence of nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction, and people profiting from them.
This reminds me a bit of a 1991 conference I went to in New York City, which most Americans will never have heard of, in which Ramsey Clark, the former Attorney General of the United States of America, was the prosecutor against the United States for war crimes in the Middle East. He brought in jurists from all over the world. 3,000 people packed this auditorium. I remember we had to pay $10 to get in. There was this huge thing with a man who had been the senior law enforcement official of the United States. Mm-hmm. And yet the establishment media never came. It was as if it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. And I sat there in utter awe. I mean, I think it had a huge influence on me. It made me realize that it's not me, it's not you, it's not individuals. It's not whether we're smart, whether we're qualified, whether we're more articulate than, it's whether we play ball. You don't play ball and they move you from honored dignitary cabinet seat in the White House to non-entity who doesn't get covered by the press no matter what he does.
As Noam Chomsky would say, it's not within the permissible limits of debate whether we commit war crimes. So not a debatable topic in the United States.
I sat there in that audience. I listened to the whole thing. I was shocked by it. I learned things I didn't know. I mean, I thought I am an expert on the Middle East, but I didn't know some of the things they were telling us about what we'd done. Mm-hmm. And of course, it gets worse. And it's all done in the name of peace process. But of course, it's a peace process that we run. It's peace as long as you do it our way. Mm-hmm. It's nuclear weapons for those who are our friends. If they're our friends, it's okay. If they're not our friends, they're ogres and awful and terrible people and war criminals. Mm-hmm. We do it repeatedly. And frankly, governments by nature kind of are this way. Romans, everybody, all empires try to get away with this crap.
Even the Danes.
But the crazy thing is that we're supposed to have a free press in this country. The crazy thing is that we have free institutions. And yet those institutions they seem to get pulled into the system more than they are able to free themselves from it, which is why I mentioned the Progressive magazine. Now here's a magazine that should have a following of 1 million, that should have a resonance in this. Instead of the New Republic, people should be reading the Progressive. And yet the Progressive languishes in Madison, and I bet you 99% of the viewers tonight never heard of the Progressive magazine.
Well, you remember A.J. Liebling's famous comment on freedom of the press? He was the New Yorker press critic for many years. He said, freedom of the press belongs to those who own them.
And since those who own them are almost always part of the system that involves the corporate, military, industrial.
That's right. They cost a lot of money.
This takes us back to the Sunday Mirror and how he turned out to be a CIA operative. Not a CIA. I got this one wrong. It's late in the day. We've been out here in the hot sun too long. In this case, it was Mossad.
CIA, Mossad. It's all the
well, okay. There's certain linkages. Yeah. Thank you very much. You are with which group?
I'm with the Baltimore Emergency Response Network. It's BURN. It's an organization that tries to speak out against intervention, including nuclear weapons type of intervention. And on Tuesday, for example, 2 of our members were convicted of trespass at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory. Johns Hopkins happens to be the #1 nuclear weapons contractor in the area. And when we go to the laboratory out in Howard County, not too far from here, we are not allowed to even hand out leaflets. It's now a crime, and these 2 nuns both received 30-day sentences. One is in jail right now, and the other one is to report October 26th. They're now the 7th people who have been arrested just for leafleting and have spent time in the Howard County Detention Center speaking out against nuclear weapons.
If only Robert Oppenheimer were here now to join in and tell us that he did it, but we're right. Because I think in the end he decided he shouldn't have done it. And I don't think he realized how quickly they would take it from him and misuse it. I'm Mark Bruzonsky. We are exhausted. It's not that hot. This is not the middle of Washington summer. We're okay. We'll survive. Mordechai Vanunu probably is sitting there. At least do they let him get books and things to read?
They do. Yeah.
So he's going to be a very educated man when he comes out, since that's all he can do is read. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this week's discussion illuminating, and I also hope you found it troubling, because it is troubling. It's very troubling.
He completed his army service with commendation, and in 1976 started to work as a nuclear technician at Dimona, the nuclear center 30 miles away. During this time, he studied philosophy at Beersheba University and became interested in politics. He took part in political demonstrations and in 1982 opposed Israel's invasion of the Lebanon. This was an important time for him. It led him to question the activities at Dimona and whether Israel's nuclear weapons program should be kept secret from its people. Israel has not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty and does not allow international inspections of Dimona. The history of Israel's statements to the world and to the Israeli public about its nuclear weapons program is a long chain of lies and deception. In 1956, Shimon Peres secretly signed an agreement with France to build a nuclear reactor for Israel. Dimona was described as a textile.